the Donald and Elon had a conversation last night, our time, I think 1 a.m. or something like that.
Quite a long one, wasn't it?
Yeah, knocking 2 hours it was. Yeah.
I thought, because I listened to about 2 hours of it and I thought, oh, I've listened to it now. But it took longer than Return of the Kings to end.
I thought in one way there wasn't anything particularly new, but in another way I found it very interesting.
I didn't learn a lot, but it was quite clarifying in some ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, to save anyone having to watch it, if you don't actually fancy watching it, I'll just sort of talk about it a bit here. So, first of all, they talked about the assassination attempt. And I must say, Trump was very sort of sang-froid about it. He was quite cool about it. Like Elon said, he said, it's kind of cool what you did. And Trump was just like, he was pretty relaxed about it. He's like, yeah, I got shot in the ear. Yeah, there was loads of blood. But anyway, I just stood up and did the fist. And
well, bear in mind, we live in an age where you get lots of young women who flap their arms around endlessly, claiming that they feel unsafe if there's somebody 30 miles away who has an opinion that they disagree with. And here's Trump just saying, oh, yeah, I got shot in the head, but,
Yeah. I mean, technically, that's true. He got shot in the head, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean...
Yeah.
But yeah, I was surprised. One of the things I was surprised is that Trump sort of praised the Secret Service, essentially. He didn't really have any massive criticisms for them. He said the guy that actually took the shot to take out the shooter, that was a great shot, and that's sort of fairly true.
Interestingly, because Elon kept on wanting to talk about the failings of the Secret Service, Musk wanted to talk about the failings of the Secret Service, and Trump kept on bringing it back to the individuals who were there on the day. And that's safe and defensible, because I don't fault the individuals who were there on the day, but he refused to get drawn on the organisation above it. And it feels like he's keeping his powder dry. It's like, because the thing is, like, you don't get shot in the head and forget about it.
No.
But he thinks he's going to win. And I bet he's going to have more to say on it once he's in power, but he's just keeping his powder dry for now.
That's what I was going to say about that. That was my take on that, is that lots of people said that Robert Kennedy, Sr., he was waiting until he became president before he did a sort of cleaning of the house of the Secret Service and how they failed in November 1963 with his brother's murder. But he never got to the White House because he himself was assassinated in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah. Was that the guy who got shot by apparently some...
Sirhan, yeah.
Yeah, but he got shot 18 times in the back with a gun that holds 12 bullets or something.
It wasn't quite that bad.
Yeah.
He was making his way out through the back of a restaurant after doing a speech because he was running to be president.
Yeah.
A lot of people thought he probably would have won. And an assassin tried to shoot him at close range, and lots of his bodyguards, lots of gunplay happened real quick.
Yeah.
And he got shot 3 or 4 times. And I think the bullet that killed him was from his bodyguard. But there was just a melee and a bit of a scrum. And 3 or 4 people were firing guns.
RFK, that guy's son, has visited that chap in jail and says, I don't think it was you.
There's loads of weirdness about that.
Yeah. But I mean, his own son doesn't.
There's loads of it. Yeah, I mean, he did admit it in court. But nonetheless, there's all sorts of weird things about both the JFK and the RFK assassinations. Anyway, lots of people said that RFK was waiting until he was president, till he was in the big seat, and then he can really do an overview or a house cleaning, or whatever you want to say, of the Secret Service. I feel like that's what Trump's doing here, is he's keeping quiet about it for now, but once he's back in the Oval...
If he's allowed.
So I was a bit surprised that he didn't really have any criticism. Trump didn't have any criticism in this...
Well, yeah.
In this...
carefully framed, but yeah.
So the next thing they did talk about, so sort of the second most important vital thing, was they did talk about immigration. And both Elon, although he's been on record as saying he thinks legal immigration, fairly large immigration, legal immigration is sort of an okay thing, but still he wanted safe borders, secure borders. They both talked about having secure borders. And
this was probably the most fun bit, because he was really going at Kamala and Biden.
Yeah, he said, they did both say that illegal immigration should just be stopped. And Trump said that there should be the biggest deportation in history. That was literally it. Largest deportation in history is the quote.
Oh, right.
Is what he needed. What America needed.
He's going to get extradited to the UK to stand trial then.
Yeah. Starmer might have something to say.
And that's, of course, the question here is how many illegals we have and how many Starmer is going to give amnesty too.
Well, because
I mean, we could have 1 million was the number yonks ago. I mean, 10 years ago.
I'm pretty certain it's 10 to 15 million.
Well, maybe, yes. Something.
No, and the way I know this is because you know the official population numbers, and then you see the stats coming out of the sewage companies and the food companies. It clearly indicates we have 10 to 15 million more people than the official number.
Tesco and Sainsbury's know the real number, don't they? But it's interesting with Trump because when he was Prez last time, he did do a big amnesty thing, didn't he? And he has also been on record as saying he would do it again. But now, when he's talking to Elon, he was saying
because
the largest deportation in history.
Because what you felt 20 years ago, 10 years ago has changed. Things have moved so fast. You know, you look at 2000 in this country compared to now. Yeah, they are like two different countries.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
When my first husband came to Norfolk, I had to search for 3 Nepalese people in the entire county. And one was just there on a student visa. So there were 2. One was married to somebody from Hong Kong. Right. There were 2 people. Now, this is a tiny country. 200-300 people at least from one country in Norfolk. And I know that because they have a gathering. And I asked them, how'd you get here? How'd you get here? And that was in 24 years, that change.
It's weird. I always find it odd.
Norfolk,
that's what I was going to say. I find it weird when people come from some of the most beautiful places in the world and they want to come to somewhere like Norfolk or Suffolk.
Or Swindon.
Or suburban Swindon.
Yes.
Like, why would well, obviously for the money. But anyway, they both agreed.
Because they're sold something as well.
An idea,
I mean, I know this in detail, and including, it's with, for example, with the Gurkhas, with Joanna Lumley. Do you remember the programme?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Were you in support of it or against it? Or you had no opinion?
I don't pay much attention to Joanna Lumley.
No, but there was a campaign to get the retired Gurkhas to be allowed to come to the UK.
I think people, if they've served in the armed forces, that is a different kettle of fish, in my opinion, anyway.
I was totally against it.
Okay.
110% against it. It was going to be a disaster for everybody.
Okay.
Because those ex-Gurkhas had a decent pension in Nepal, and they were the top of their village. They were the squires. They lived with their marigold gardens. Their wives didn't speak a word of English, had never been out of Nepal.
They were better off in their own country.
They came here, and they came to the most rat-infested, mouldy places. They don't know how to use an airline toilet. We saw them coming. They were squatting on the toilet. My husband and I were walking around Dubai trying to help these people. They can't read how to transfer their planes. I know I'm going off, but they have, and now they can't return. And they are now not, because they haven't got any money. Because it costs money. They sold land, they sold things to get here, and they haven't got any money to get back. They're stuck here now. And they are now the bottom of the society. And I asked my ex-person, what's Aldershot like? He said it looks like Kathmandu. And that wasn't a compliment. So those people have gone, and this is what we never talk about, is what happens to the migrants themselves, that their expectations of what they get and what they actually get are totally different.
Yeah, well, Lisa and Andy's happy, though. The directors at the Runnymede Trust got what they wanted. So,
Did they talk about Ukraine?
They did. If I just finish up on the immigration thing, they both agreed that if a country doesn't have borders, then there's no country left. Again, that's a quote. So again, fairly based, but most people 10, 15 years ago might have thought that was a little beyond the Overton window to say something like that. Now, a couple of, potentially, at least in Trump's case, the couple of the most powerful guys in the world are absolutely on the same page with that. When it came to Ukraine, Trump's funny. I do find Trump funny. His turn of phrase and the things he says. When one time he was talking, they were talking about how you do need to be strong. Elon said that a president of the United States needs to be needs to be able to sort of be give the impression of being a little bit scary to the leader of Russia and
credible
China.
threats, and this is the point that obviously Machiavelli made in The Prince, which is there were lions and there were foxes, and lions are leaders who can make capable threats because they're capable of following it through, whereas foxes they're cunning but they cannot give credible threats. And I mean, so for example, over here in the UK, Starmer is obviously a fox because he's just like, yeah, we're going to arrest everybody. It's like, we know that you can't do that. And
his skills on the punching bag weren't all that, were they?
Right, yeah, exactly. And I mean, obviously Biden can't give credible threats, whereas there's this lovely anecdote I love of Trump, which is he was negotiating with the Taliban leaders and he had them in a room and he was basically saying, okay, I want you to do this thing, and they started kicking up a fuss. And so he said to the lead guy, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, I will blow up this house. And he reached into his jacket and slid across the table a picture of this guy's house. That is a threat because it's very specific, and you know he will do it. That is a viable threat. But I mean,
and he'll probably gloat about it as well.
But didn't Trump have some line about the way that Biden makes threats?
He said like these stupid lies coming out of his stupid face.
Yes, that was
stupid threats coming out of his stupid face. One time he was talking about when he was talking to Putin, and Putin said no way, and Trump said way.
And if
Do you remember that bit?
If you compare this with our health secretary, Wes Streeting, who says that he will throw Jan Moyer under a train, that threat, which is never going to happen, is just pathetic. Unpleasant, without any thought, compared to this.
You remember when Trump did one of those surgical strikes on one of the leader of the Iranian paramilitaries?
Oh yeah.
And then afterwards, when he's doing a press conference about it, he's actually joking and gloating about it, like the guy died like a dog. Or when he took out one of the leaders of, I think, the ISIS. Yeah. He was like, the guy was crying. He was crying. I would have cried. Anyway, on Ukraine, basically saying that it's sort of got to come to an end, sort of thing, and that they are close to, if we're not careful, we are close to World War III. Yeah, that someone like Putin doesn't take the threat to someone like Biden seriously, and of course he doesn't, because Biden's vacant. He's just like this doddering, like
watery-eyed. But he's not going to take the threat to Kamala seriously either, because she just cackles.
No, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, she doesn't know what. She probably doesn't know really. She's one of these people who gets Sunnis and Shias muddled up.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Samson, can you scroll down on this? My mouse is it's on the wrong place somewhere. They talked about the economy for a bit, which I thought was actually one of the more interesting. There was a little bit of insight there, because Elon said something that I had a conversation recently with Godfrey Bloom, the ex-MEP, Godfrey Bloom, Godfrey Super-Based Bloom. I love the guy. In fact, this Sunday there'll be an epoch where I'm talking with him all about economic and the history of money.
Just saying that Godfrey Bloom is another person who should be inside the tent and not outside the tent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Godfrey Bloom is fantastic. Even though he's older, he's amazing.
Yeah, he is.
He speaks at the English Democrats. These people need to be inside the same tent to get enough momentum to get reform to win the country.
And he said something which is just absolutely true. Just absolutely true, and I'm sure you'll agree with this. And it was something that Elon said, and Trump agreed with him, which is government needs to lower its spending. It's just if you want to get inflation under control.
It's come up once or twice in Brokenomics.
And if you want to get inflation under control and you want to get debt under control, the way you've got to do it is stop ridiculous levels of government spending. And Elon just said that straight up, flat out. And Trump agreed with him. And Elon even said, if and when you're president, if you put together some sort of commission, some sort of grand commission to do it, I wouldn't mind sitting on that. I could sit on that if you want. And Trump was like, sure, we can do that.
The issue for me about this government spending is not an economics one. When Clive Lewis did his thing in Norwich the other day, Norwich is a university town, teaching hospital, lots of charities. Every single person in his demonstration was indirectly or directly paid by the government.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean by
this is the social
government
problem,
spending,
which is much bigger than the economic problem's bad, but the social issue, the political, is even worse.
It's huge in the US as well. There are lots and lots of people who are either directly employed, but when you take into account all of the people who are indirectly employed as a result of government contracts, a vast amount of people in the US are employed one way or another by the government. But I like this section on the economy. Elon probably did it better. The problem I had with Trump's response is he does the standard politician thing, is, we're going to cut out waste. Now, the problem is in the US, they've got a gap now of over $2 trillion between the amount of tax revenue that they collect and the spending that they've got. If you take out the redistribution programs, the various welfare programs, and look at what's left, even if 80% of it is waste, it doesn't quite get you there. Right. So you do need to cut those redistribution programs, the welfare programs, and Medicare, Medicaids, and of course he doesn't go anywhere near that. So Trump will be an improvement, but he's not going to close the gap entirely. Well,
it seems they're sort of beyond it being possible. I mean, the government debt as a whole goes up something like $1 trillion every 100 odd days. Yep. That's absolutely insane, unsustainable, obviously unsustainable. No real bearing on reality anymore, those numbers. And they didn't really, I mean, Elon did say that, but Trump didn't address it.
Is it unsustainable? Because
I would have thought so.
Well, but everybody has been saying that for 20 years. And it is not necessarily unsustainable. I mean,
it's unsustainable if you want to have a productive economy.
Yes, and you don't want to have constant asset inflation and
if you want to look like a third
world
country or grinding towards the end days of the Soviet Union, then it's sustainable for many, many years.
But there's no I know we're changing the subject a bit, but we are the same in the UK and most Western countries. We're past this state of return. Where
I don't think so. No, we
don't think so.
No, we can get it under control. We probably can't get it out of control without upsetting an awful lot of people. There's not a way that you can do it which will win sort of mass popular support, but it can be done.
Yes, but we can't win. We're having trouble with popular support for.
Yeah, whether you can do it and win an election is a different thing.
Or if they keep going down sort of the Keynesian route of quantitative easing, you just will end up with hyperinflation, right? Because Argentina has still got suffering from hyperinflation, hundreds of % of inflation, right? And Milei started to deal with it. Again, they touched on that by slashing government in general, and of course, then spending. But Trump didn't say, "Oh no, I profoundly sort of ideologically disagree with you, Elon." He didn't say any of that.
Well, he put a lot of it on things that he can do stuff about, like energy
prices, right? Yeah, energy prices. He said, "Drill, baby, drill." I mean, it's a classic Trump thing. It's so quite American, isn't it? But yeah, because and taking a swipe at Harris, saying, she'll stop fracking completely. I wouldn't.
And that's what I'd like to hear Nigel saying.
Yeah.
In response to Miliband, drill, baby, drill.
Yeah.
Really, just drum it out there.
Yeah. Say, no, I'm going to drill. I'm not going to apologise for that. You're insane.
The thing that surprised me on that is not so much Trump, because I knew that this was Trump's position. What I was impressed by was Elon's response to not just the drilling, but the whole climate thing in general.
Right.
He's actually a lot less bad than I thought he was.
Especially given he runs an electric car company.
Yeah. So this is the thing. I've long admired Trump and what he gets done and the projects that he delivers and all that kind of stuff. He's a very impressive guy, obviously. But I always thought, well, we're at odds over this climate change stuff. But actually, when he started talking about it in this interview, he's nowhere near. He's just not alarmist at all. I mean, he was basically saying, if you take these current trends and you project it over several hundred years, then we got a problem. But he says that, we're 200 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. And he was like saying, I don't really care if it goes to 400 or 500. Yeah, it's not a problem. When it gets to 1,000, I've got a problem then. That, funnily enough, is the level that in a Navy submarine, they've got a CO2 alarm and it doesn't go off until it hits 1,000 parts per million. It's just not really a problem until then.
I think the numbers are more like sort of around World War II, mid-century, it was about 200 parts per million. Now it's something like 450. But in prehistoric times, it was like 2,000 parts per million.
No, more like 20,000.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, yeah, depends how many million years you want to go back. And you get mega flora and fauna, don't you?
But the issue of this is, I mean, I know Piers Corbyn, who's obviously brother to Jeremy. He's actually, and he is a climate scientist. Now, his equation on this is really simple. And by the way, he's got a first from Imperial. in physics, and he spent his whole life in climate working, including having a company on AIM. Did you know that, Dan? Piers Corbyn.
I didn't know he had a company on AIM. What is it?
It was a company, a climate forecasting company, weather forecasting. Okay, so who would you believe on climate change? Jeremy Corbyn, who's 2 E's in sociology, or Piers, who has a first in physics from Imperial?
Piers is the more impressive brother of the two. Yeah.
Well, Piers' whole point is this: you cannot prove which way the equation is. CO2 to
whether
heat,
the warming comes first and the CO2 follows. Yes,
and Piers says, of course, it's the sun is 100,000 nuclear power stations. Past warming will raise the CO2.
Well, the sun is a nuclear fusion reactor, a million times the size of the Earth, and we orbit it. So tiny fluctuations in the sun will swamp whether your wife leaves the bloody light on in the bathroom or something. It's just
yes, but Piers just says it's just absolutely nonsense.
But the thing I liked about this is I always assumed that Musk was more alarmist, and actually, if you listen to him, he's actually entirely sensible on the climate thing. He just says, go forward a couple of 100 years. You can make a slight turn now and end up in a better future in several hundred years, or you cannot, which would be less good, and it might be at a planet at 1,000 parts per million, the air is less comfortable to breathe. So he says, just make a slight turn now, and it will be fine. Don't worry.
Yeah, but we're just going up at such teeny amounts. I mean, if you look at the history, as you were talking about, of the world since the Permian, the CO2 chart looks like from the ceiling straight down like that.
We're at some sort of all-time low.
We're at an all-time low. And if we get any lower, life stops.
Because photosynthesis can't occur. I think it's below 60 or something.
Yes,
60
but
parts.
we're really, really low already.
Climate will always be in flux. That is the nature of it. It will always be in flux. And if you look at it on sort of geological timescales, even in the tens of thousands of years, not even millions of years, tens of thousands of years. You've got mini ice ages. The graph is sort of crazy. But expect it to stay at sort of the late 19th century, first half of the 20th century, when our record really began in earnest. To expect it to just level out and stay exactly there, that's crazy.
But you take my point. Musk was much better on this than I gave him credit for.
He was
and Musk even said, "Oh yeah, of course we've got to do more drilling and more oil. Of course we have."
Because of course,
build nuclear power.
There are reasons why electric cars like Teslas are great. They're quieter. They don't.
Well, they're fast.
They're fast, but they don't. But So I mean, horrible sitting in traffic jams outside somebody's house with diesel fumes. I mean. In Kathmandu, which is a valley in the winter, and they have hills and mountains with 50-year-old diesel trucks. The entire city is just in winter when there's no rain and no wind. It's just one smog, horrendous. And so yes, you could see why, but not from the climate point of view, from moving your production to somewhere else.
Remind me, Bo, did Trump say much about the climate? Because I know Elon had a whole bit on it.
A bit.
What did he say?
He certainly wasn't disagreeing with him. Right. They agreed on everything, really, it seems. They talked about how nuclear power has just got a really bad rep. It's got like a PR problem. And that it should
and that was the bit where Trump was saying, a lot of people don't understand it. It doesn't matter because I do. So I'll just get on with it. But you don't need to worry about it. It's fine. And he's right.
Yeah. Moving on, because we're getting on for time a bit. They talked a fair bit about Harris and lawfare, which is a nice way of really saying that they're sort of politically, in all sorts of senses, destroying the republic while we watch. And that Harris will plan to open the prisons and the borders and stop all fracking. He said she's not a smart person, by the way. Obviously. And he was really sarcastic and rude about that. She's saying that she's such a beautiful woman. He was obviously being sarcastic.
Yeah.
He's
Have
funny.
you seen that care. Musk has put out a tweet saying that he would be happy to do the same thing with Harris?
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
Which I don't know how that would go, since he spent like the latter half of this one basically laughing with Trump that, she's thick and stupid.
Well, I suspect, they talked about how they can have a conversation, an actual back and forth. You wouldn't really be able to do that with Harris. I would have thought it would be her. It would be her cackling and being extremely passive aggressive and trotting out rehearsed lines and a load of nonsense. Whereas you do actually, for all his faults, and you can actually have a conversation with Trump. It's a real conversation.
I'd be genuinely surprised if Harris has had an original thought in her entire life.
Well, the worst one was that when I went to the border, or we went to the border. No, we
Yeah.
didn't go to the border.
Oh, right,
Remember
yeah.
that one?
Yeah, well, she's supposed to be the border czar, wasn't she, at one point? And then later they claimed she wasn't even. In fact, when it's on record
Well, there
that
was
she was.
another interesting thing about the number, and this will be the same in our government here. The amount of time that Harris and what's her new guy called? I can't.
What is
Tim
that guy called?
Waltzing or something.
Waltz have spent
Waltz.
in the public sector versus the private sector versus Trump and Vance. And, Trump and Vance have spent sort of 80%, 20%, and they've spent sort of 99% in academia. We've got the same issue here. I mean, out of the new Labour MPs, the majority of them have never had a job in their life.
Yeah, loads of them. I saw someone on Twitter put a list of their past work experience, and there was a couple in there that have had real jobs, but a lot of them, nothing at all. We've just got to move on here. Last thing they really talked about, they touched on, was freedom of speech and how important it was. And there's a tweet, if you could go to the next
If
thing.
you're going to show what I think you're going to show.
Yeah, there is expletives. But so someone from the EU sent Elon a sort of an open letter saying, trying to tick him off, trying to sort of wag his finger at him like it's a naughty schoolboy. Go, remember, you've got to abide by all our EU rules. And Elon just did this. And anyone who's just listening, it's a meme telling him to F off.
Yes.
And that's the sort of thing you want from a real leader.
This may be the best response I've ever seen on Twitter.
Yeah. Do you remember when he called out, is it Bob Iger at Disney? He tried to sort of essentially, in a sense...
Oh, yes, go F yourself.
Yeah, yes. Go F yourself.
I'll try and do it for those who are listening. So basically, Ferry Britton, an EU commissioner, basically wrote this long letter complaining about Elon doing free speech.
And how we needed democracy.
Yeah, our democracy. And Elon responds with a tweet from Tropic Thunder of the guy screaming down, take a big step back and literally know, in the biblical terms, your own face. So,
yeah.
I think that's quite good.
It's funny, yeah. And anyway, one of the last things, there's a couple more things I wanted to point out, but we're sort of stuck for time. So one of the last things I wanted to say is that Trump said, and I think this hit the nail on the head, really, like the actual taking the temperature of a nation. He said that the people want the American dream back. Whatever that means, but we'll all take.
And we want our English dream back, and and our English dream wasn't particularly great. A sort of terrace house with a few daffodils in the front, but it wasn't great. It wasn't the American dream. But you walked to school and it was all pretty boring, and then you came home and you watched Coronation Street and it was even more boring. And then you went to Butlins on holiday or Benidorm,
and your kids didn't get stabbed.
Exactly, and you didn't have to wade through rubbish and people having psychotic episodes outside your front door.
You could go to an Ariana Grande concert or a Taylor Swift dance class without being massacred.
Or take your kids to a Lego store without being stabbed. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, but if anyone's interested, it's sort of just out there now, so watch it. It's a couple of hours long. So that's it.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're up to, you can see behind the scenes from our obviously world-famous election stream, the British election stream, and it's a lot of fun. Definitely sign up and watch it. And if you want to see all the other things that we're putting out, we post links to all of them on our Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.